Welcome into another edition of the FutureSox RoundUp. My name is Elijah Evans, and I am joined, as always, by my co-host Jeff Cohen. We are also joined today by Birmingham Barons broadcaster, the wonderful Curt Bloom, who we are super excited to have on with us today. And he's gonna, we're gonna dive into everything Birmingham today. That's all this episode is about today. The Birmingham Barons, won the Southern League champions as of last week. Super incredible time for the White Sox organization, for Birmingham, for Curt and everybody else down there that works so hard in Birmingham that we love keeping an eye on throughout the season. So we're going to get into the entire Birmingham season from the playoffs to, the first half of the season where they clinched a playoff spot that they were able to compete in the playoffs, and then even look into next year a little bit for the Barons. But we're going to really do it all, and we have the right man to join us. Curt, how you doing? Welcome on.
Great. Thank you. I think my feet finally hit the ground. The first 3 days after the championship, I don't think anybody associated with our front office slept or had any time to really think about and engage what really did happen. You're just still like, wow. Going in as the underdog, I think that's what made it even sweeter. But I think today, Monday, when I hit the alarm and I got up and I started doing some work, today was the first official day of the off season.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. It's obviously a roller coaster, but a good one for sure. Jeff, were you able to watch some of these Birmingham games before
You
we
know,
dive into it?
I really didn't get to watch them. I was kind of consumed with the Kannapolis games, and yeah.
And then
But
we got to watch all the clips though. We got all the clips
oh
online, and
yeah,
we were able to
oh
dive into it. And I was up in I was coming back last week, and I caught the last game, and it was really incredible experience. Obviously, it was a little bit of a roller coaster season, right, Curt? I mean, it was some ups and downs for sure, right? The first half was incredibly strong, clinched a playoff spot, right? Then there was that middle of the season where there was a ton of roster turnover. There was a lot of adjusting to the level, a lot of people really getting settled in, and then come playoff time, heating up towards September and getting hot, and then come playoff time, the team just took everybody by storm. So let's start at the beginning of the playoffs. You go into a matchup. Tennessee Smokies have been a tough matchup all year. That's the Cubs AA. They've been really tough. A lot of their key players have also gone up though this season to AAA, much like the White Sox guys have. The Barons guys, right? What was the energy of that? That first playoff game, and then how did you feel kind of after that first loss? Losing the first game of the series, and then how the guys were able to bounce back from there.
You got to go back and look at that first box score. Remember, the Barons struck out 18 times, left 11 guys on base. I mean, I don't know who, except the guys in uniform, had any right to believe that they were to come back to Birmingham. The one stat, and not, let me take that word away, stat. The one vibe that I had, guys, was all year, use that phrase matchup, all year, the Barons had just a little bit more than the Smokies. Now, Tennessee won an extraordinary amount of games. They won more games, about 20 more than the Barons did. But when the teams matched up, including that big series in June, somehow the Barons came out on top every time. And that's what gave me hope going in. The Smokies had a winning record against everybody in the league by far except the Barons. So you go back, Jeff and Elijah, to that word matchup and the phrase matchup. And when you look at that phrase matchup, somewhere in the back of my mind, I'm like, they're better. The Smokies are better, but we seem to come out on top. And you don't have to win 3 games at once. You just have to win one, and one. So lose the first one, strike out 18 times. And then you knew coming back to Regents Field, you had to punch them in the face early, and that's exactly what happened. Jumped on them, kept going, wore out their bullpen in what would be game 2. And again, that's something that I think we were all aware of, that they didn't have their bullpen for game 3. So if we could stay close, we would have eventually we would have the advantage. I couldn't tell you that we'd go to the bottom of the 10th and walk it off like that, but still there was that incredible vibe that said, no matter what, you might have, 5, 10 big leaguers still left on your team, but somehow we're going to beat you. I don't know how, but we will. And that's what happened.
And in that game too, let's hammer that a little bit. 12 runs on 14 hits, right? Like, what were some of the moments in that game where you really felt like, okay, this game is going really well for the Barons, and they're going to kind of just cruise from there? Because it was, one run in the first, one run in the second, then they go to three in the fourth, and then another in the fifth before totally exploding and blowing it open in the eighth with a 6th-run eighth inning. So it was kind of that gradual build. But what were some of the big moments in that game that really gave you confidence that it was like, okay, this team is rolling now?
You go into the playoffs, and fortunately for me, it's not my first time. And you recall that in previous playoff series, there's always going to be a name that you have no idea he's going to make an impact, and he shouldn't make an impact, but yet he does. And Sean Gusenberg had a monster hit that allowed the Barons in our franchise and our front office to relax, clear the bases. And up until that moment, it was still, well, if they make some noise, if we walk a few guys and they get some guys on, it's you're never out of it. And they have a dangerous lineup. But Gusenberg's base hit cleared the bases. And again, he because of some injuries and some things very, very late, he did not get a lot of playing time. And it was determined that he would get the starting game. I got to take a look. I think he came off the bench actually.
He did come on. He came in for Veras, who got hurt in that game.
Yeah, that's what it
Yeah.
was. And so we got a guy comes off the bench, and he has a bases clearing double, and he just like, this one's over. Let's get to tomorrow.
Yeah, 100%. That's a huge moment. And then also in that game, that series, right? Jacob Gonzalez returned after having a period out, and he hit that early home run too when it was 1-1 after the first, and then Gonzalez gives the first, lead of the game in that second inning. What was it like getting him back into that lineup? Because this is a guy, that has obviously had ups and downs, right? But like, he is an excellent player when he's at his best, and that's a huge addition to that lineup kind of late in the season after he was out.
Well, it was a shock.
Yeah.
I had been under the impression he would not play at all in the playoffs. He missed every game of that final 6 games. He did not start game one. And it came off the bench for a pinch hit when we thought he was done. I had an unconfirmed report. I love that. Love the way that sounds. That he had posted he was done for the season on his own social media. Now that I'm going to use that phrase unconfirmed. I didn't see it. I had somebody else tell me about it and said, "Hey, he's done for the season." Well, not only was he not done, but that home run was also, as you mentioned, we go back way before the Gusenberg stuff, and he crushed it. And it was a big moment for him, a big moment for the team. And he really had a wonderful he had a good postseason. Those games against Montgomery, some key moments prior to that Tennessee series. And one thing when I talk about Jacob Gonzalez, I'm expanding this answer. You guys, we have to remember he made less than 10 errors all year at short. So we can talk a lot about his hitting, but in the playoffs, you go back and watch, there were some plays hit his way that he turned into outs that were as big as him hitting that home run.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, hey, Curt, I'm curious how you felt about the Barons pitching going into the series and who excelled during the series.
Well, guys, I was telling this story to somebody else. In the second half was tough. You mentioned Elijah roller coaster,
Yeah.
and he was up and down and up and down. And I would say about a month to go, even though the Barons were maybe treading water, win 2, lose 2, something developed and something clicked, and that was the back of the bullpen. And so I was very encouraged by the way, even though it didn't show up in wins and losses, but what did show up was Eric Adler finishing games, Garrett Shanley getting the bulk in the middle, and then Peyton Pallette, again, one of these great stories, who was in A ball up until August. And so, again, as I mentioned, it might not translate it into wins and losses, but I started piecing it together, and I was like, if we can get to the 6th or 7th with a
Yeah.
lead, we could pretty much get to the finish line, which during mid June, late June, all of July, early August, we had no chance in getting to
Right.
that situation. So you ask about that. Look, there is I called him the X factor, and that was Garrett Shanley, and so unappreciated. You can't find him in the prospect list, but he should be the first one lined up to get measured for his ring because he got all the ugly innings. He would get the ball fourth inning, take it to the seventh, and just a big momentum changer because he just dominated batters. He took over without looking at the box. Didn't he take over for Schultz in the
Yeah.
Montgomery game?
Yeah.
I mean, to have a guy like Shanley in why was he successful? Because he's got the game conquered from here to here. Not from here down, but from here to here, which meant just give him the ball. Doesn't matter. Start, close. He's such a team guy, and he dominated. And he just shut down after we had the lead and after Schultz exited. Shanley slammed the door hard,
Yeah.
and then he came back again against Tennessee. So
I was going to
that's
say,
a guy that 5-10 years down the road, you got to circle and say, oh, look what he did. He might not go further. I certainly hope he does. But that's an unsung hero in my book that the Barons don't win without the work of Garrett Shanley.
yeah, and sticking on that Tennessee series, part of what Shanley did right in that second game is he went a few innings there and then allowed you to save the bullpen of
Right.
Paulette and Adler and Franklin for that third game, right? So
That's
Schweitzer,
and
it's a huge
that's
difference maker. Yeah.
yeah, and that's what was the difference between the Barons and Tennessee from 2 to 3,
Yep.
and we knew that
Yep.
it was all
100%.
playing out that way. Shanley allowed, like you just said, the bullpen to line up for Game 3. They didn't have
Yep.
a Game 3. They were down. Now look, again, the game went down to the last pitch, but they were on fumes, and heck, we still had a couple of arms left in the bullpen if needed.
Yeah, and that's what happened. I mean, you look at a game 3, right? You get a really strong start from Riley Gowans, another one. We'll talk about his later start, down the road, right? But you get a 5 2/3 inning game from him in game 3, right, with 2 runs, and then you get to go to Franklin and to Paulette and to Adler, who had been that back end core, right? And Paulette's a guy that we've talked about a lot on the podcast, me and Jeff, because like he transitioned from being a starter, right? He was starting earlier in the season in Winston. He was really struggling to find his command. He goes to the bullpen, lets it fly, prioritizes his changeup, completely changes kind of the way he approaches hitters in 2 inning spurts and succeeds obviously exceptionally in Birmingham. And then Adler's a guy who, started to get those saves towards the end of the year for Birmingham and really found his groove after it took him a little bit to settle into the next level, right? So you go into game 3 and you've got all those guys lined up, and then you've got, some big moments from some hitters, right? You've got the guys that, weren't there at the beginning of the season in Nishida, in Camilletti, in, DJ Gladney, right? That come up huge in that game 3 against Tennessee to then send you to the championship series.
DJ is one of my favorite stories. Love the kid who's from Chicago, and typically my entire time in Birmingham, when a kid that we've seen before comes up late in the season or doesn't make the opening day roster, my first wise guy crack is, "Where were you? What took you so long?" And his immediate reaction was, "Hey, I can't control this. I can control only what I can control." And I thought that was the most incredible answer, telling me instead of off record, on record, "Look, man, I'm really upset that I didn't make the roster. I can't believe they sat me down kept me down in Winston all year long." Absolutely not. He just took advantage of being there. Veras came alive again. The White Sox are going to have to make room for him somewhere. I don't know where, but when I say that, is it left field? Is it right field? He's only 21. He could come back to Double A. He can go to Triple A. But when that guy gets hot, you can't get him out. And these guys got hot at the right time. And probably when I talked to Kevin Bowles of Montgomery, their manager, he thought the difference maker was Nishida. And Nishida was our Duke Ellis like 5 months down the road, where Duke was an amazing difference maker at the top of the lineup in April and whatever, May. And then Camilletti was a leadoff guy. Gonzalez was a leadoff guy. Tatum was a leadoff guy.
Yeah.
There's so many guys. I'm looking right now at the roster. So many guys, and it's a tough position.
Yeah.
And then Nishida comes in, and even if he didn't get a base hit. He works the count. You can see him driving the pitcher crazy. He's got a
Yep.
small strike zone, and then he had a huge bunt single, and then another couple of by putting the bat on the ball, moving guys over, giving you a chance. Also, go back to that game, that last game, the clincher, and look at the remarkable catch that he made. I
Yeah.
believe it was in the top of the eighth inning. Now he's listed at 5'6", and he needed all of that. Like if he's 5'5", he wouldn't have got it, and it would have been a leadoff base hit, and things could have been a lot different. But that was an exciting play, and so he caused a lot of problems for that Montgomery pitching staff.
Yeah, we've been talking about all year, but Jeff has been harping, how much he works the count, right? Like his ability to work
Yeah.
the count, especially at the top of the order, completely changes the dynamic of an at bat and of a lineup, right? When you've got an entire lineup behind him and he makes your pitcher throw 9 pitches every single time he gets to the top of the order, right? Like that is difficult for pitchers to deal with, especially guys that are still learning and developing as pitchers in Double-A, right? When a guy's fouling off pitches and taking pitches, and he walked more than he struck out this season. Like you don't see that much in baseball, right? That's not a common thing to see. So he was a huge table setter. Getting into this Montgomery series, right? What was the energy like from series to series within the Barons, and just how were they kind of feeling heading into that next series?
Winning certainly breeds the confidence and allows you to think, go into that series. Look, we were the underdog against Tennessee. Maybe we can do the same thing against Montgomery. And it was interesting how it all lined up. Noah Schultz, of course, did not pitch 1 inning in the Tennessee series. The rest of the world of baseball was looking at the Barons and the White Sox going, "Are you crazy? Are you crazy?" So he gets down to Montgomery and was competitive. His first 3 innings, he was not lights out. And again, delivering some heavy blows on them. Um, bases clearing, base hits, and jumping on what was a very, very good team. They were Montgomery was shocked. Again, it's like getting in the ring with Mike Tyson in his glory days, and he hits you, and you're like, "What just happened?" And so you could just feel that in that game one down in Montgomery. I will tell you this. I think a lot of us agree if the Barons don't steal that game and dominate and win that game, the chances of winning the second game at home and then pushing it to a possible third game.
Yeah.
So it played out like a script, like a blueprint did, which means go down there, jump on them, get some key base hits. And Camilletti was finding the gap. Goosenberg had another big base hit. Um, and it was just like a dream. If you draw it up and go, this is how we have to beat them, jump on them, then go from Schultz to Shanley. I know that Montgomery was stunned. They didn't think that would happen. They've got. I looked at their lineup again. This is 6 guaranteed big leaguers, probably impact guys, and most likely 8 of the 9 will get to the big leagues. I don't think we can say that about the Barons, but for that game one, it didn't matter. They got together, and then game two is one that we'll remember, for quite some time.
Yeah, I was gonna keep going with game one, but I think we can almost just dive into game two. Game one was 10 hits combined. I want to mention between Wilfred Veras, Camilletti,
Right.
and Terrell and Jacob Gonzalez. Those 3 combined for 10 hits, which is ridiculous. Obviously in one game, and 15 hits total. Probably could have been even more than 7 runs in that game one. It was really just a dominant performance. The bullpen closed it out. Followed up Noah Schultz with just great innings from the bullpen, and then like you said, you head into that game 3. I mean, just give me start with your 1 minute version of just how incredibly energetic that game was, because I could feel it through the screen almost, just how the
Mhm.
energy of that game.
The underlying story is the hurricane that had already And for those in North Carolina where I went to school, our thoughts and prayers go out to you. And it was already determined that the one of two things: we were going to play a double header uh, Tuesday, or we were going to have to play at 12 o'clock Wednesday. It just everything was stacked up. It said, "Win it tonight and don't even worry about it." Um, Everything starts from the beginning, which means Corella. Very, very competitive. He got out of a major problem early. One of the great fielding plays of the year. Bases loaded, ground ball back to him. He sprints to the plate and gets the out at home. I felt very good about Corella. Corella's got big league stuff. Corella's going to pitch, as John Eli said, not Curt Bloom, but Eli said he's going to pitch in the big leagues for a long time, and that's the kind of stuff he has. So I was very confident with him. Um, and I mean, look, this is a 1-0 game with back and forth and back out. This guy had a chance. That guy had a chance. That guy had. Oh, I was still thinking about going, man, did that really happen? And we expanded, and Chandler Simpson, who just had a phenomenal year. 2 out, 2-strike double, top of the ninth. But there wasn't a guy in that ballpark that didn't think on the right hand side of the ballpark and the Barons that didn't think that, okay, great, you tied it, but we're going to win it, and that's what happened.
Yeah, so it started with excellence, right? In that bullpen, right? Obviously, Corella started it. Freeman got out of a jam, and then you get quality sound innings from Franklin and then from Paulette. So Eric Adler, right? He goes out for the ninth. That was a great hit by Simpson. It wasn't like he missed some breaking ball right over the middle. It was not a terrible pitch by any means. At least I didn't think. I think it was just a really good piece of hitting by a hitter who's hitting 350 this season and led minor league baseball, in batting average, right? But then what is it like for a guy like Adler, right, who gives up the run to tie the game in the ninth, but the faith in him from Sergio and John Eli to put him back out there for the 10th, he shuts down the 10th to allow his team to get a walk-off in the bottom of the inning.
My broadcast partner, Alan Dunn, who's been in baseball for 40 years and is a pitching savant, he said exactly what you said, Elijah, and he kept talking about the pitch Adler threw was a great pitch.
Yeah.
Spoiled by even a better swing. And Simpson's had this ability to get his hands in. If Simpson misses by a quarter of an inch or a fraction of a second, we never go extras. But he did every possible thing. He brought his hands in. He didn't over swing looking for a home run. He just spoiled a really, really good pitch. To send Eric back out there, look, that's the guy you live and die. I was watching the Mets today. I don't know how long this will be replayed and played and played and played. Edwin Diaz went back out there in game one for the Mets. He gave up a ton of runs in the eighth. They sent him back out there for the ninth, and he got it done. So it was kind of like the same thing I was thinking of is, look, Adler had pitched extremely well second part of the second half. He gave up a run that was, again, by the best hitter in the league, just beating him to the spot. So I don't think anybody had a problem with that at all, of going back out there. And you have to, during the season, there are going to be many chances. You got to find out what all 28 guys are capable of. This was a great quiz for Adler. Okay, you pitched yourself into the mix for AAA. Let's see if that's what you were telling us. We're going to run you out there for the 10th inning. Show me you deserve it, with a guy on second, no less. And he did.
And then it's like, you not only is it a guy on second, right? But with the 10th inning rule, the biggest thing when you have a guy starting on second is you have to get that first out. If you don't get that first out in extra innings, you're going to give up a run. Not only is it anyone, but it's top 10 prospect in all of baseball, Carson Williams, right? Who you've seen a lot of this year.
Right.
I've been watching Carson for a while, keeping an eye on him just from being a prospect guy and keeping up with prospects, right? Like, this is one of the best hitters in all of minor league baseball. And he strikes him out on 4 pitches. That's a gutsy pitch in the top of the zone to get the strikeout there. And it's just, and then it's, 2 more outs from there on soft contact, right? And he gets himself out of a jam. But going out there, again, with a runner on second and you're facing one of the best hitters in all of minor league baseball and striking him out was just such a huge moment for Eric. And I know the guy, and I've talked to Adler a few times, and I could tell in that moment he was fired up for sure.
It was a tough matchup for Williams rather, and I'll tell you why. You could see from the booth that he was out of gas. And when I say that, this is a kid, 21 years old, has the potential to be let's be careful, but a Bobby Witt-ish, which means he could be a top 3 hitter in your lineup. He could be at short for 10 years. He's 21. He had a terrific year, but he's 21 years old. The stress, the pressure, and the length, those at bats in the series prior to the one when he had to face Biloxi, and then in our series in 2 games, it just that snap, that quickness wasn't there. Now, that doesn't mean if you make a mistake, he's not going to hit it, but we could tell the young man, the young kid, and a great prospect. The gas tank was running on fumes. I think I don't know him, but I would think he would admit deep down that he just it's incomprehensible to have the same type of energy April, May, June, July when you're putting up those numbers. Then it's now September. You're 21 and you're a couple of days away from finally going home, getting a rest, and and mentally and physically. So the name is a threat, the reputation is a threat. But if you made your pitches in those 2 games that we had to face him, we were going to, the Barons were going to come out on top.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Hey, Curt, it sounds like a phenomenal series. Appreciate all the great insights. Well, let's double back now and just look at the season, look at some of the individual players. And at the start of the season, it was a very different team, a very powerful team. I mean, probably we were calling it the best pitching staff in probably the minor leagues at the start of the year. I'm curious what you thought about the team then.
I've said this a lot recently. April, May, June, we clearly had to be the best AA club. There couldn't have been an Eastern League or Texas League because of that staff. And then you didn't even talk about Ramos at third, um, Baldwin at short, Carroll behind home plate, Elko at
Elko.
first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's Duke Ellis. I mean that's a sick group of guys right there. And I was telling this to a lot of other people too. I really truly believe that the Barons could have gone to AAA and taken a series against a lot of AAA clubs. Obviously, that's a biased opinion, but I think they could have gone into, and I'm not going to name names because I don't know who, but they were that good.
Yeah.
Thorpe, Bush, Adams, etc. It was collectively one of the great groups of talents in quite some time anywhere. And then through what is a typical minor league season, they're going to migrate, and those guys that we talked about, they deserved it. There was nothing left for Baldwin to do here, nothing left for Thorpe to do here. Ramos, nothing left. So they wound up getting their rewards. And you look at the big league roster, including the very last day or transaction, Carroll got up there. So
Yeah.
we were stacked, and it was the kind of team. If you're a minor league history guy and you follow it and you've been around like I have, the '92 Mississippi Braves, um, they won 100 games, and that was considered one of the greatest teams of all time. That just imagine what it means to win 100 games in the minor leagues. I can't even. I mean, we won. What did we win? 70 some odd, and I can't even imagine. Let me go take a look for 72. You've got to add uh, 28 more wins to get to what Mississippi did. But this group that we had, if they stayed together, would have put up some astounding numbers.
Yeah.
This guy Thorpe was at this incredible rate, and Baldwin, Ramos, Caro. I mean, it would have been fun. And one other guy I got to mention, Duke Ellis, because Duke was part of the beginning, that thrust that got us out there. If Duke is a Baron all year long, he easily surpasses 100 stolen bases, as Chandler Simpson did. Okay, I mean,
Yeah.
easily. He had 30 before June,
Yeah.
and the only time he was caught, this is just silly stats, and this is why I stay up too late. The only time he got caught was actually by a pitcher, not by a catcher. So you add that to a collection of other guys we talked about. Uh, that gives you a lot of hope. And it was funny. I saw the White Sox Jerry Reinsdorf statement, and he said, we're not happy and we're very disappointed, but down in Birmingham, we won the Southern League.
Yeah, I mean that was a good little of preface because
That was a nice. Thank
there
you, Jerry.
there is a lot of talent there, right? Like between it's almost two separate teams to this point, right? Like you had that first half squad and then you have this whole second half squad. There is big league talent in both, phases of the Barons roster this season, right? Like obviously that first half guys, Thorpe debuted, showed a lot of potential. Cannon was technically last year, right? But he was with the
Right.
Barons all of last year, right? And then you've got guys in Brooks Baldwin who debuted. Caro's going to be starting. Caro's probably going to open, next year as the opening day catcher for the White Sox, right? He's at that level. Elko's going to get innings in Chicago next year. Ramos finished the season in Chicago, right? Like there's a lot of guys on that roster. And then you had Bush debut, right? You had Eater get one appearance with the White Sox. Adams is going to be up next year for sure. Iriarte debuted at the end of the year out of the bullpen, right? Obviously Noah Schultz is on that trend. We'll get to Noah Schultz in a second here, but like there is talent on both phases from the beginning of the season and this playoff squad that are a lot of players on each team are going to be big league pieces. And when you've got a team like the White Sox, right? Like me and Jeff keep talking about this, but like, it's like there is a heavy portion of the 2025 White Sox that were on the Barons in this season, right? Like there is a lot of holes to fill and there's a lot of talented players that played in Birmingham this season.
And you would know better than me. I talked to our instructors, our rovers, and they told me, although the talent in Kannapolis was young, it was very good.
Oh, yeah.
And,
100%.
every guy that you mentioned all had at some point in their career, all played a half a year or a full year in Kannapolis.
Yeah.
So they like a Baldwin, and I wave my hand here. That I'm not. There's not a fly here, but I wave my hand. Baldwin is just one that comes to example, and Veras and guys like that. Gladney, when they were in Kannapolis, they're like, who are they? And then a year and a half, 2 years later, they're on the verge. So I've been told by our instructors, our rovers, said, hey, there's some really good talent. Big George might be a year away, to name
Few years
one.
maybe, but yeah.
Couple of guys that got hurt that were in the trade with the Dodgers. So they're not done. And then the exciting thing is you haven't even talked about Hagen Smith, who, I mean, I would think there's a better than 50% chance he breaks
Yes.
camp as a Baron.
Yes.
And then the White Sox have a major decision to do with Schultz. In fact, I've got it in front of me. So let's see how many starts did he make.
I think he got up to 90. I know he got up, including the playoffs, got up to 92 innings. I can't remember how many total starts, but I think it was
And I'm
26
looking
maybe.
at the starts, and I don't know why they didn't have it here on this thing that I pulled up. But
He
there it
made
is.
21 starts in
16.
the regular season and then
Okay.
24 including the playoffs. Yeah.
There's a I would say a 50-50 that your opening night is Smith, your second night is Schultz.
Both of them. Yeah.
Depending on the shakeout, that's a pretty good start.
You think?
That will draw some attention. There's some hope. It's going to take some patience,
There
and
is a lot of talent on the way. I'll tell you that from the amount we watch Kannapolis and Winston, right? Like Hagen and Noah are obviously going to be the headliners, right? Those are the two highest rated left-handed prospects in baseball right now. But at the same time, there's a lot of other guys on the way from last year's draft and from this year's draft that are guys that are kind of progressing right now through Kannapolis. A lot of them ended the season in Winston too.